Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today we have special guest, Cindy Burnett. Cindy is the host of Thoughts from a Page podcast, where she casually chats with authors about their latest works and gives readers a backstory to their favorite, not yet discovered sometimes, books. An avid reader and book reviewer, Cindy loves to talk about books everywhere she can. In addition to hosting her podcast, she actively promotes books she loves on social media and writes 2 book columns for the Buzz magazine. She's also the co-author of Conversations from a Page, a Houston author event series that brings authors and readers together in a relaxed and welcoming setting. The group recently added an online book club as well. All right, welcome to the show, Cindy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And one of the things I like to ask you is, based on my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. That's how the show came about. I wrote it right before the pandemic happened, and it was right on point. So I like to have guests share about maybe a time in your business or personal life where you experienced a difficult situation and how you got back on track.
Well, I think the pandemic was probably a difficult situation for all of us. I host a literary salon. You mentioned it. I'm a co-founder, and we had just gotten, kind of our stride. We were 2 years in, and the pandemic hit. And so we had to move online. And that was just like it was for everybody, trying to figure out how to move online, what to do, how to get people there, how to find your place within all of the crowded, there's so many people moving online, how it would work, getting it all situated. So that probably for me has been the hardest thing, was trying to transition from our very successful in-person event to online.
Yes. Now, are you going back to in-person as well now that the world's opening, at least in the US?
We are. Yeah, we're going to go back in September. So we're really excited. We have our authors lined up and we're ready to be back in person.
Wow. Now, how has this changed how you do business going forward?
Well, I do a lot of different things. So that's the salon. And going forward, I think we will try to not be online for it. I'm in Houston, and we really have created such a fabulous community of readers and authors coming together, everybody enjoying time together, coffee, muffins, and then listening to these wonderful authors. And so I think moving that online, it worked fine, but it didn't transition as well. So I think for us, we will just stick with being in person for that. With respect to other things, I do the podcast kind of like you do, and I launched that during the pandemic, and that will just stay like it is. It's been a joy, and I've really enjoyed it, kind of my silver lining of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, how did you get started with sharing about books? Where did this begin, in your youth, or how did it happen?
Well, I've always loved to read, and I've always told people, I just read this great book, you should read it, and always kind of been an avid reader. I was a lawyer for years, and when I have 3 children. My oldest is 20, and when she was born, I went part-time, and then by the time my 15-year-old was born, I kind of retired from the law. And so about maybe, 6 or 7 years later, I was looking for something to do, and Facebook book groups were just becoming this kind of big thing, and so I joined a couple and started reviewing and meeting authors. I had no idea that even existed. It was a whole new world for me. And so I just slowly stepped my toe in, and 5 years later, I have the podcast, and I write articles, I host the salon, I have a big Instagram account. So it's been really fun.
Yes, that's so interesting. And so now, going from law, what did you bring from your law practice into your book practice?
Well, that's a great question. I think a couple of things. Writing, I have to write so much as a lawyer. So I think the ability to structure my reviews in a logical, distinct manner and, organizationally making sense. I think also being able to pull out the important things from a story. I'm a quick reader, and I think being able to read through and understand the important parts, the things that authors want to be asked about, asking different things than everybody else is asking, because, you'll see there's the same author interviewed 10 times and there's the same questions over and over. So I try really hard to obviously get the important ones, like what's your book about and things that everybody has to hear. But after that, to really focus on different things. And I hear that a lot from authors, like, you're asking me different questions than I get asked elsewhere. Thank you. So I think the law really helped with that.
Oh, that's great. Yes. So now, for those tuning in who may be thinking about writing a book, or you already have a book out there, what tips do you have for getting reviews and really the whole writing process to get really noticed out there?
Well, the front end of that, I don't really know very much about. I don't really deal with, getting an agent, getting the book sold. That's not at all up my alley. And I don't really deal much with that. But on the back end, like once you have the book and it's coming out into the world, I think developing really good relationships, having a social media presence is the first thing. So before your book is even close to being published, have a strong social media presence. Be out there and be posting about lots of things, not about your book all the time. I think you see some of these authors that 2 months before the book comes out, all of a sudden every day they're posting about their book. And I think that it's a very giving and welcoming community and sharing community. And I think those authors that do the best are the ones that promote their friends and promote other books they really like, and then wrap in their own promotions within that. So I would say, developing a relationship with the Bookstagrammers, book reviewers on Instagram are called Bookstagrammers. And there's a huge community, and there's a huge book Twitter and BookTube and, TikTok even now. So I think having your presence on one or two of those and having a strong presence long before your book comes out, and then people know you and they know you have been willing to help others and you're interested in reading and writing and not just wanting to constantly promote your own book.
Right. Yes, that makes sense. I learned so much with this book that I did. This was my first book on my own. I've had others, group books, whatever. And so that was nice, but this was all on my own. I did work with a publisher and everything, but there was a lot to learn. And the most important thing they wanted me to do was get these reviews.
Yeah. Because
it helps on Amazon. It helps when you go to sell. People need to know, is this book worth reading? And so I didn't even know anything about that. and you have to do that in advance and have your copy ready to go and send to people in advance. And it's just so interesting. It's like you get a PhD in how to do a book when you do a book.
Right. Or marketing. I mean, I always feel like these poor authors, you've got to also be a marketer now. You're not just a writer, but you're doing all of these other things. So I think that's right. And I know Amazon's algorithms work based on how many reviews you have. And I know I hear authors constantly saying that their publishers are telling them to beef up their social media presence, do reels on Instagram and, just kind of do things that are clever and different and build your presence long before your book comes out.
Yes. And it really can be a full-time job. Once your book is out, promotions are just getting started. You think it's done? That's like day one. And there's many books that really they're discovered like a year or two later because they kept marketing.
Yeah.
Others stopped right away, and that, they sold to their family and friends, and that was kind of the end of the story, their story anyway. And they might have an incredible book, but it's the marketing that goes on after that that's going to make a big difference. I'd love to hear more about your book club. How does that work? How do you structure it? How did you do online versus in person? You said it was better kind of in person. What does the structure look like for the book club?
Well, so I have worked at an independent bookstore for years, and I've worked all their author events, which are structured in a format. The author comes to the bookstore, usually at night, stands in the front. Everybody sits there and listens to the author, usually talk on his or her own, sometimes be interviewed by a bookseller. And then a couple questions are asked and everybody feeds through the line and gets their book signed. So that's wonderful. I love those events. I've worked them for years, but I wanted something different than that, something more personal, something that that you felt you were really getting to know the author. So we were targeting women with children and older women that didn't want to go out at night, necessarily drive after dark, whatever it is. And so we do it first thing in the morning. We actually start pretty early, like 8:45, and kind of right after drop off, or, right after you're worked out, and we have coffee and muffins, and the authors come into town, because we almost always do non-Houston authors. So they come into town. We usually take them to dinner the night before, and then they come that morning and I interview them together. And we always pair authors who don't have books that go together. So we do like nonfiction and historical fiction, or a thriller and regular contemporary fiction. And we purposely do that to try to, you might come because you love thrillers, but then you hear this other woman speak about her book and you're like, oh, that sounds great too. So we're trying to kind of build a momentum for both books, and drawing people for one reader to the other, and, one author to the other, and vice versa.
Oh,
so yeah, it's really fun. And so then I interview them, and then they mingle with everybody. People buy the books because we sell them, and then get them signed, and then it's done. And we've had just great success with it and great feedback. And we were really, like I said, it was growing leaps and bounds, and then the pandemic hit. So hopefully we'll be back to that in September.
Oh, yes, because people are so happy to connect now. I have been to more events and seen more people in the last, I could think, maybe 2 months in Vegas and a month in California. I have two homes that I go back and forth. And it has been so nice to just connect with friends again and make new friends. And it's like we need that. Even those that aren't social are out there now.
Well, and that's one of the things people have said, that they've made friends at our events. So these people come back time after time, and they're like, oh, I saw you last time, and they get to know each other because they all have reading in common.
Yes. And one of the things, I actually have 6 children, 3 of my own, 3 foster, 2 adopt. And so they're all grown now. And a part of my experience as a parent was I became a Waldorf teacher so that I could go through the grades with my kids and be with them in school. And they got to go free because 6 kids, private school tuition is crazy and for 6. And so I did that, and I enjoyed every moment. But one of the things we studied was Rudolf Steiner for the Steiner Waldorf schools. And his belief was that we need to study and understand all different cultures and theories and practices to understand ourselves more deeply. And so when you're sharing 2 different types of books, I think that's incredible, because it's touching on things that maybe I would have never looked at that other book. Exactly. And then the next thing you're interested in that other book. And that's what we really need. It's not just what you enjoy. And I still make sure to read a different book every month that's like something that, I don't know, I'm not really interested in that. And then the next thing you know, I am.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've loved about my podcast, is that I get pitched by authors, by publicists for authors all the time for books that I would have never picked up on my own. And I end up reading them, and I'm like, oh, these books are so good. So it's really, really widened my reading.
Now, how do you do with Audible? Do you use Audible at all, or do your people that attend your clubs do Audible as well as the actual physical, I've got to hold the book in my hand?
Well, I'm a big indie bookstore person, so we use Libro FM because it will go back to indie bookstores. You pick an indie bookstore that you want, it supports them versus Amazon. So, and I want all those stores to stay in business, so that's a big focus of mine. But you can definitely do the audiobook if you want. I mean, the nice thing about our salon is you don't have to have read the book. It's more an introduction to these authors. A lot of times we'll pick people that people might not know. We have hosted some larger authors like Ellen Hildebrand and Mary Kay Andrews. But we've also hosted some, people that are just getting started, and it's a great way for people to meet them and learn about them. But yes, you can read it however you want. I mean, obviously you can't have an Audible book signed, but you can listen to it if you want, for sure. And I do a little bit of that. Do you do much of that?
Because I do, sometimes I drive or I fly back and forth and to California and Nevada. And so during that drive time or fly time, I did a lot of driving with the pandemic because it was too hard to fly. Yeah. And now I'm kind of back to flying, but that's a great time to I'll listen to books on like a couple X's really fast. And then if it really interests me, I'll slow it down, and then I'll buy the books that I love. And, then I'll be like, okay, I got through that. I got the important part, and I don't want to buy the book. I still love the physical books. I mean, that's like, I lost my home. That's part of my book is I lost my home to a fire in Ventura. And that was the 2017 fire. And it was all my books. I had like an entire living room wall filled with books because I was a teacher. I always read. My kids always read. And so I had all these books that they had meaning to me. And even my family, we were sad about the books. Our photos in the books were the worst. Everything else you replace. So that was it. And now I've started over again, and I've already filled a nice little room. But and then I check them out too, and they read. Yes. So yeah, it's interesting. And when I first told my daughter, okay, I'm doing Audible as well, recording my book, and she says, oh, is that for blind people? And I said, well, I guess, but and she never listened to a book. She's only physically held books.
That's me too, until recently. I just much prefer the books, but yes, I'm the same way.
Yes. So now, what are your top books that you've been reading or reviewing this year?
That's a good question. There's one called, okay, I have to sit here and think for a minute. I always have to ponder. Okay, so there's Hostage by Claire McIntosh, which is an airplane, terrorist hostage takeover of an airplane. So that was really good. Songs in Ursa Major by Emma Brody. It's a debut. It's a takeoff from the relationship between Joni Mitchell and James Taylor. I didn't even know they'd had a relationship. And so it's kind of historical fiction, but it starts with their relationship and then she goes kind of in a different direction. It was really good. Those are probably my two favorites. House of Sticks by Lee Tran. It's a memoir. She's Vietnamese and they immigrated to the United States in the 90s into New York City and Queens. And that experience, they didn't speak any English and had to find their way. She ended up going to Columbia. So it was a beautiful story.
Nice. Yeah. Now, growing up, for parents listening in, did you read a lot? Did your family read with you? How did that show up in your family life, or how did reading start to become your new addiction in life?
Well, I've always loved to read. I mean, always. And my parents did read with me, and they also were great about buying books and, just always having books around. I read all of the Nancy Drews and all the Trixie Beldens and, all of that. And then I started on mystery series when I was in my teens. So I think, yes, I had always, and I read that way with my kids always when they were little.
Yes.
I think it's a great way to start.
I think it's so important. Now, with my family, and this is a very diverse family, adopting three of my own. And so everybody came in at different times, and I felt like it was a soul contract. We all became a beautiful family. And to bring us together, to get the children to sleep at night, even when they first showed up, you know what I mean? And, as a new foster to adopt, while we were in the adoption process, we would do a family reading time every night. And we would literally do like an hour, and we'd go around, everybody'd have a book, we'd share the book, whatever, and we'd talk. And then after that, we'd have a discussion. And we did that. And so now, even though my children are all grown, they call just about every night and check in, because it's a habit, and they all are readers, strong readers. And so that made a big difference. Their vocabulary is larger when they were younger. It really put them ahead. And it also brought out, we would discuss situations in the books, the morals of the story. And as they got older, real interesting things that are real life things that you have to talk about. And the books were a great way to open up the discussion without, okay, now tonight we're going to talk about sex ed, or we're going to talk about safety, or whatever. We're going to talk about cutting and all these crazy things that happen in schools now. So that would open the conversation, and it would give us a way to discuss it where it was really safe. And then sometimes some of my kids would be like, you know what, there's a kid in school that's doing that. We've got to help them. And we would do like a little intervention. And it was all from these books and this little process that we had. It's like our ritual that we did. And it helped the little ones go to sleep when they were babies. It would help them just get to bed because it was an evening routine. So if you have children, grandchildren, it's a fun thing to do. And then once you get them to bed, you can read your own favorite book and you have that time because they're in that pattern of a bedtime. And I did travel a lot. When they were very young, I ran gift stores. I had 5, and then, they kind of became self-running at a certain point when I went back to teaching. But when I was doing that and I was traveling, I would literally get up. We didn't have Skype, but we would do over the phone. And we would Yeah, we would still have our book time and our evening ritual. So, and it got them to bed when they were with grandparents or with a sitter, whatever. And so that made a big difference. And it was just part of what we did and still do.
Yeah, no, and that's how we were too. And so both my girls love to read. My son decently loves to read. I think when he gets past high school, he will love it more because, you read so much for high school already. But yes, I think you can lay the foundation. And I completely agree with you on vocabulary. I feel like that they all have much larger vocabularies than they would if they had not been reading.
Yes, it just makes such a difference. Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your podcast.
Okay. So what I did when I had been doing this salon and interviewing authors, people were like, you really like to do that. It's, you should launch a podcast. And so in pre-pandemic times, I did not have time to launch a podcast. So I kept saying, great idea. I'll think about it. So then last March hits, March 2020, and I'm sitting there, scrolling through my phone all the time, freaking out about the coronavirus. I'm super type A. And so I was like, I need something else to focus on that is not just scrolling through my phone. So I started researching the podcast and what it would be like and, where I could put it out and just all the process. I mean, there's a lot that goes into a podcast. And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to do it. So last June, I just had my year anniversary. So last June, I launched it and I interview 2 to 3 authors a week about their books. And I just, sometimes I'll talk to publishers like a publicist, or sometimes I'll talk to a bookstore owner. And I just launched my Patreon and I'm doing a bookseller a month and then some bookstagrammers every month. So it's been really fun. I'm loving it. It's gone well. It's been a ton of fun. I've read all these books. I've met all these authors. So, I'm sure it's like for you. Do you really enjoy, I'm assuming you really enjoy the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And now this is actually on radio, on-demand TV, and all the podcasting channels. And so it's a whole different thing that I was invited in to be a guest on a show. And then they had openings. And so I took advantage of that and I love it. And it's one of the things you jump out of bed in the morning and you're happy to go have an interview or, I do my own edits and then send it to the show. And I actually have learned a lot in that. So that's you start to learn these different things. And it's like you get another PhD. Now you have a PhD in podcasting and radio. And it's something you learn. I didn't know anything about it. And the best way to learn is to just start.
You throw yourself in. And again, talk about marketing. I feel like I have a degree in podcasting and now marketing, so definitely trying to find a toehold in there's a lot of podcasts out there, but it's really fun. And like I said, I've read so many books. I've met so many authors. It's been wonderful.
Now, what are your podcasting marketing ideas or what's the secret there?
Well, I don't know if I've got the secret, but again, social media, I think that's been great. And I've been doing a lot of cross promoting. Mm-hmm. So finding podcasts. First, I did book podcasts, but now I've been doing things that I think my listeners would like. Like I just cross promoted with a wine podcast and, other things like that would appeal to the people that are listening to mine. Nice. And just really developing relationships. I feel like Patreon has actually been the best thing so far because I have now a whole place that everybody can show up and we're talking books and they're giving me suggestions and things they want to do. And, I can kind of interact a little bit more. So I have really enjoyed that.
That's great. Yes. And that is something that we have to learn, the marketing. I was very fortunate. One of my best friends, her husband was running for assembly and they asked me, to help out. Well, and they said, what's your political party? I said, I'm a freedom person. I didn't know anything about politics. I was very young at the time. And I ended up taking over the campaign and being the manager because the other manager got sick. And so I got this job and I had to learn all about politics. And I don't really love it, to be honest. I stay kind of, non-political, but I learned marketing. Because it's a campaign. So when you think of political campaign, marketing campaign, it is a campaign and it's very similar. And so a lot of times people say, well, how did you know how to do this? And it came from that.
Yeah.
So once you market one thing and then the gift stores. So I did a lot of marketing with the gift stores, but this was back in the day when we actually had TV commercials on, we were in magazines, it was print media, it was the local newspaper. It was so different. We didn't have social media yet. I think they were barely, when I was closing down the store, they were barely starting to have online stores. And so, and then, I bought all these buildings and just rented them out and went and taught. So to spend more time with family. So it's interesting how we learn. And that's another thing. You're going to buy a lot of courses. Did you end up buying a lot of courses for the marketing?
No, I haven't done any of that. I have just reached out to people. I have talked actually to a number of authors, found what they thought was good. I have just connected with a lot of people. No, I haven't really. I mean, the only money I've spent on marketing would be running ads on Facebook or Twitter, little things like that. And then, sponsoring a few things, but that's about it. I have not spent, even when I was also launching the podcast, I didn't spend any money on courses. I just figured Google was getting me through.
Yes. Oh, that's great. That's really good, because there's some really good courses out there. And then there's some that you pay a lot of money and you don't really get anything, or you can Google it. So that's important if you're listening in and you're starting to market anything. To just start slow. Now, for the Facebook ads, is there any secrets there with marketing? I
don't know that I've cracked them yet. You can set your parameters, so you can set who you think is listening. Like, I know who listens to my podcast, so I set those same parameters on Facebook. And I've done a lot on Pinterest. I haven't really paid much on Pinterest, but I've put a lot of my podcast things on Pinterest, and I have found that has worked really well too. It's an odd connection to me, but it works.
Are you on TikTok?
I am not. I feel like I am too old for TikTok.
No, this is really interesting. I barely got on there, and I haven't really done anything on there, but I learned a lot from Gary Vee about how important that is. And it's like, even though I've only done a few posts on there and I haven't really done any campaigns or anything, 300 or 400 people will watch.
Yeah.
You don't even know. And that's crazy. And then as you go up, it's more and more people, and thousands of people can see depending on what you put on there. And so that's interesting. And then how about Clubhouse?
I just joined Clubhouse maybe 3 weeks ago. And it's really interesting because now I'm seeing all these articles like, is Clubhouse dead? Is what's going to happen with Clubhouse? But I don't do much on Clubhouse. I hop in every once in a while when an author I'm following is doing something, but I haven't. Have you done much?
I was invited with a friend to run a few Clubhouse groups. And so we did that, and we still do now and then. And she's actually an attorney right now. And so it's kind of funny. Yeah. And so we do a little podcast and like one on negotiation and business, different topics. And we'll have a nice little group. And what I felt about that was, before the lockdowns ended or all the mandates and we could actually go out and see people again, it felt like we were all together, like your book club. We were all together having coffee or tea and talking.
Yeah.
It was this beautiful open conversation. And that part I loved. It just felt like home, like a real in-person meeting. And people talked about what they needed to talk about. And we resolved a lot of things and had a great time. And we got connected and became friends. So I like that platform, although I'm not on there that much either. And I think it's because there's so many platforms.
Well, and I guess there was a new one. What did Facebook? Somebody just launched another one. And I think that's why they're thinking, a lot of these platforms may just go away, especially with lockdown ending, but we'll see. I just have to pick the ones that exactly. I have to pick the few that I can focus on. And I already had the presence on Instagram. I'm on Facebook personally. So and then Twitter, I love. And so, those are the three that I usually focus on the most. And then I will do Pinterest with the podcast, but I don't, you don't really interact on Pinterest. So
yeah. Now, do you have any advice for parents, moms listening in who are, running a business or doing a side business and raising a family? You've got your kids and you're working, you're able to switch your careers in a certain respect. So do you have any advice?
Well, the advice that I give is do it, because I think that if you don't do that and you're just there and your kids see you at home all the time and you're able to help them with whatever they need all of the time, that's really almost a disservice for them. That, when I was going back to work and I had someplace I had to be and I couldn't leave to run something to school, or I, couldn't always make their lunch in the morning because I had something I had to do, they learned to do a lot of that themselves, and they learned to be more responsible, and they understood that I had my own time and my own work, and that was also a priority. And I think that's really great for kids. I think these days there's so much focus on maybe kids being too pampered, too spoiled. The focus is only on children. And I think it's great for them to understand that everybody has a life. I have a purpose. Obviously, my most important purpose is being a mother, but that I have lots of other things that I enjoy too. And that my sole goal isn't to just help my children. That I think it's very important that they understand that I am my own person and I have a job, and that's important also.
Yes, I totally agree. Imagine with these 6 kids, and I'm running businesses. I really involved them with a lot of the things I did, and we made it fun and, that kind of thing. But they learned how to make their own lunches. They had to do their own laundry starting in 2nd grade. And it was like, okay, we'll just replace the clothes if it's damaged, but they did fine. And then they got to high school. And it was interesting because they were like, my daughter said, Mom, do you know there was this girl and she was almost crying because her mom didn't make her lunch. And she said, can you imagine? She doesn't. And I said, don't you know how to make your own lunch?
Or overseeing the homework, I would have people mention to me, well, did you check your son's homework last night? And I'm like, no, like he's in high school. If I'm still checking his homework, there's a problem, like they need to learn to do all of that themselves and be independent. And obviously I'm there every step of the way if there's a question, things like that, but that they are their own independent people, and they've learned that from me.
So important. Now, as a teacher, I would have children 2nd grade come in. I remember one child that we're really good friends, so they won't mind. He brought in a completed space science project, and his dad works at JPL. And I know his dad made the project.
Right.
A 2nd grader.
Right.
Zero attention span at that point did that. And so we had a long conversation about, well, you got an A, I told the dad, but your son, you're really hurting him. And it does make a difference. There's something about this self-respect, and the goal to raise our children is to raise little adults. One day they're going to grow up and we'll lose our job, which is kind of the goal. I have a whole chapter on that transition time.
Right.
And it's something that's so beautiful when you're able to know that they can stand on their own 2 feet, but you catch them when you need to. When they need a correction, they get a correction. But it's just, I don't know, there's just that self-respect. I did that. I made the breakfast. Yes, I burnt the eggs, but I made the breakfast, or whatever it is. When
I walked the dog. I helped with the laundry, whatever it is. I agree completely.
Yeah. And sometimes things don't get done, like a homework assignment wouldn't get done, and they would get the consequences. And guess what? The consequences for a 2nd grader is nothing. The consequences for an adult is you lose your job, or you get a ticket, or you go to jail, or whatever. So let the consequences happen when they're very small.
I agree completely, and understand what those consequences will be.
Yes. Yes. That does make a big difference. Now, growing up, did you have a favorite book?
I loved Nancy Drew, which is so funny to me now because I didn't even realize that Carolyn Keene wasn't a person. So those books were farmed out and they were just contracted, and, tons of different ghostwriters wrote them. Yeah. So I always, wanted to meet Carolyn Keene, and I thought they were just the greatest books. I loved Nancy Drew. That was probably my favorite. So how about you?
When I was 8 years old, I actually went to a garage sale, and I used to help out and get allowance and money from the neighbors cleaning or doing their yard or whatever, this little kid. And they were selling at the garage sale Think and Grow Rich. So at 8 years old, I wanted to help my family. And my mom, who was staying with my grandparents, she had gotten divorced, and she was, complaining about she didn't have money to get on her own, whatever. And I thought, well, if I get this book, and I can learn how to think and grow rich and help my mom. Well, I still have that book by my bedstand.
That is hilarious.
I read it day and night, and I actually did buy my mother a house later on in life. And so it did make a difference. And then one Christmas, a neighbor bought me Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingston Seagull, that original book as well. And my kids love it. And the concept, you got to read the story. If you have not read the story, it's like, as a little child, it's a little deep, but you don't get that. You just, oh, okay, it's a seagull. And then you keep reading it later on in life and you get the whole meaning. So those are my two favorites.
Well, those are probably a lot more exciting than Nancy Drew.
I just feel like something like, I did read Nancy Drew, and then I love C.S. Lewis.
Yes, me too.
Chronicles of Narnia. And whenever something went wrong, I'd go to the closet and be like, why can't I just go there? Let me go.
I absolutely love those books. And in fact, that's so interesting that you said that, because this fall there's a book coming out called Once Upon a Wardrobe by Patty Callahan. And she writes, it's fiction, but she writes about how he came up with the idea to write the Chronicles of Narnia.
Wow.
I just read it. It's so good. So yeah, that will definitely be on one of my top reads for the year. And I love that series. And in fact, it made me think I need to get them back out and read them again.
Yes. So good. Now, if you could go back in time, this is something I always ask guests, if you could go back in time and give your 10-year-old self advice, what would it be?
I think it would be kind. I think that, teenage girls and even middle school girls can be rough. And I just watched, my girls go through that the last, years ago. But I think just always be kind. Think before you speak and be kind. Those would be my pieces of advice.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that is something. I have 5 boys and the 1 girl. And girls can be so mean to each other. It is, it's, guys, you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
They are practicing. I don't know what, but it is rough out there.
And it is.
I don't understand. And then women, even grown-up moms,
yeah.
There's moms in different camps. There's the working moms and the stay-at-home moms and the moms that like this and that. And they kind of go at each other sometimes. And it's interesting because we need to unlearn that.
Yeah.
Whatever, I don't even know where that came from.
Right.
But it is something that makes a big difference when you can be kind to one another, and our children learn.
Yeah.
So if I saw a mom that was fighting with all the other moms as a teacher, guess what that little child was doing?
Yes.
Fighting with all the children.
Absolutely. Because it's a learned behavior. And I was also going to say, I think those girls that are mean girls, some grow out of it for sure, but some don't. So, I mean, the same people that were mean girls when you were in middle school are the people that are, tormenting the other mothers. But I think that, yes, just try to realize, walk a day in somebody else's shoes and realize you don't ever have any idea what somebody else is going through, and try to always remember that. And I tell all 3 of my kids that. If somebody's behaving in a way that doesn't seem like it's very nice or, out of the ordinary for them, just give them a break, because there's probably a lot more going on.
Oh, yes. And really talk to the parents, school, staff, because sometimes if a kid is acting out or abusive, it's because they're being abused at home.
Right.
Or something is definitely not right. Or if they're acting strange. And anything that's off character, because this could save that child and protect everyone. And, nowadays, bullying has gone so far that it's, one of the things I worked on is opportunity transfers politically, so that if a child was really bullied, their parents, even if they economically couldn't afford to move, they could transfer to a new school and get some counseling and help to get a fresh start and not have to deal with all the bullying.
Right.
It really makes a difference.
It totally does.
Yeah. So now we are coming to the end of our talking time. So I'd love for you to share where people can listen to you and join your clubs.
Okay, great. So my website is thoughtsfromapage.com, and my podcast is Thoughts from a Page Podcast, and you can find it on my website or on any major platform. And then the links to my book club and literary salon and all of that are all on that website. All my book reviews, all my book columns, everything is just in one place on thoughtsfromapage.com. And I'm on Instagram at thoughtsfromapage.
All right. Thank you for being a guest, Cindy. And for those tuning in, we'll be back after these messages. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
This is NBC's Sheila Mack Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And I have a free gift for you. I am actually giving you the gift of a free limited program. This is a lifetime account free, and it is from the new program Groove Pages. And this program replaces so many other programs that I personally have purchased for my business. So it replaces your ClickFunnels, Samcart, Tap Affiliate, ActiveCampaign, Kajabi, Vimeo, Shopify, Properly, WordPress, Zendesk, Calendly, GoToWebinar, EverWebinar, StreamYard, which I'm using, and Response Suite, Lead Quizzes, Funnel EdX, and Pipedrive. There's a savings of $18,746 a year if you actually subscribe to most of those programs. And so I am actually slowly switching everything over to the Groove Pages, and I have a special link for you. And if you activate under this link, you are also eligible for a free call-in, a monthly call-in to get your business rebooted and started today. So the site to go to is the https://Groove Pages, GroovePages.groovesell, GrooveSell.com /a/8 letter T like Tom, capital B, lowercase l, lowercase v, capital Z, capital J, 6, capital S, capital O, lowercase nq. And the link is here if you're watching the on-demand TV to see, and I would love for you to try this out. I am saving a ton of money and creating funnels, websites, videos, all kinds of things using this system, scheduling with my clients now for free. GoToWebinar is now free, so enjoy. And again, you can check this out or go to my website to learn more, www.sheilamack.com. If you are just tuning in, this is NBC's Sheila Mack Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And I have some news for you. I have a free gift right now. The Groove Funnels program is something that I have recently personally just switched over to. And what this is replacing for me is ClickFunnels, Samcart, Tap Affiliate, ActiveCampaign, Kajabi program, Vimeo, Shopify. It is replacing my WordPress and hosting, my Zendesk, my Calendly, my GoToWebinar, and my StreamYard, as well as a few other programs. So I am saving a ton of money, and it is something wonderful for my consulting business and also for streaming and recording my radio show. So if you are interested starting a new business, or you already have a business and you are spending thousands of dollars a year on each of the programs I mentioned alone, you can save a fortune right now using my link. I have a little bit of a long link, but it is a link to be able to get the free program. It's a lifetime free program. If you're doing a little bit more, then it is a very low one-time fee program, but it is free for starting out. And if you are just starting a side business or a new business, this is a free tool that gives you everything you need, no excuses, to start your business now. And you can go to https://groovepages.groovesell.com /a/8 lowercase t, capital B, lowercase v, capital Z, capital J, 6, capital S, capital O, and Q. If you're watching the on-demand TV, you can see the information here, and this link will also be available on my website. So enjoy. Again, check this out. This is a group of free programs that will save your business so much money each year, and it is my gift to you. Enjoy. And now back to more messages. Overview of the Boots formula. In December of 2017, I lost my house, my car, and my cat due to a fire. It sounds like a country music song, but that was my reality, and yet another rock bottom situation after a long period of doing really well. When we're able to retrain our minds to focus on the positives, we're able to enjoy more of life, even while we're rebuilding and rebooting. We're going to starve those negative thoughts, not feeding them with our attention, time, or energy. When you focus on the good parts of your life, those things that you can be grateful for in this moment, that energy will bring even more good things your way. Contribute and utilize your unique talent. You're not thinking about the problem at hand. You're not showing up for approval. You're just being your best self. You use your rock bottom to set the direction for your life beyond this rock bottom situation. It's important that you are really honest about where you are in this situation. You can't lie because you don't want to give up your personal responsibility. You have to own every part of this and realize it could be worse. It could be better, but this is it. If you aren't able to be honest about where you're starting from, you won't be able to clearly see where you want to go or how to get there. The next letter of Boots will help you answer that. The second O is for order of operations. The third step of the Boots formula is finding the order of operations. When you're in a rock bottom moment, there are certain steps you know you need to take to get out of it, and you need to complete those steps in a certain order. T is for thinking. The fourth step of the Boots formula is thinking. If you recall your thinking at the most successful points in your life, it's probably vastly different from your thinking when a crisis brings you to a rock bottom situation. Often, at the toughest times, our thinking goes to survival. We lose sight of the possibilities and opportunities that are before us. This is where thinking comes into play. It's vital to have a strong mindset in order to keep our boots on and walk out of a rough spot in life. Thinking leads you to a clear vision of where you want to go on that map of your desired outcome. You've made the decision that you're going to New York. Your bags are packed. You have an idea of how you're going to get there. You know the steps you need to take, though you may not know how the hell you're going to take them all, but you've made up your mind. That's where you're going. Tony Robbins often says, it's in the moment of decision that one's destiny is shaped. That decision is the thought that comes before the action steps required to reach your new goal. Everything happens in this step, in that decision. You can see it, feel it, embody it. Things start to show up because you're looking for them and you're open to them. You'll start getting the results you want just because that decision is in your mind. It becomes that real to you. Once you have that clear vision in your mind, you have to see yourself as if you already are living in your desired reality. You're just doing the steps to get there. S is for stepping up. The fifth and final step of the Boots formula is a literal step, stepping up. You've gone through the first 4 steps. You've decided how you're going to show up. You have a picture of where you're going. You know the steps you need to take, and you've made the decision to actually do something. It would be nice if you could just sit, think, and meditate your desired outcome into being. But that's not the way it works. There is some validity to the idea of manifesting what you want, but at the same time, you have to believe enough to actually go out there and take the risk. You have to overcome your fear of giving your first presentation, making your first speech, or writing your first book. You have to get out of your comfort zone and you have to take those steps. S is for stepping up by taking the personal responsibility required for a real reboot. While the B in Boots is about being in the present with who you are in the situation, S is for taking those steps toward the future you want. Although there will be many times in life where we have little or no true personal responsibility for an event that alters our lives, it is always a gift to own your own response and reactions to situations. What can you do to shift the energy and step up to your part in the situation? In order to reboot, one must be willing to step into action. This last step ties back to the first one. It all comes back to being. How are you going to be when you're going through this? Sometimes it's ugly, dirty, not pretty, and certainly not fun. Nobody's going to help you move, so you have to pack all the boxes yourself. Procrastinating isn't going to help. You just have to take those action steps you defined in the order of operations. When you first start, it's overwhelming because you feel like you're still buried in the situation. Chaos is all around. But because you've done the first 4 steps of Boots, you have an action plan. You're not doing 1,000 steps today. You just have to take 1. You do the things that you mapped out one by one, and that helps you see, okay, I can do that. You have clarity on the action steps, so now it's time to actually get moving. Are you ready to strap on your boots and start walking? From rock bottom to moment of empowerment. You may be thinking, okay, now I know the formula, but what does it look like in action? Great question. Let's look at the rock bottom moment I told you about at the beginning of the chapter to see how I applied the Boots formula to get back into right action. After the fire, after my cat ran away, and after my car was totaled, I was in a funk for a week and a half or 2 weeks before I even noticed. I don't know if it was shock or depression or overwhelm, probably all of that. It was a lot of loss in a short period of time. But then I had to go back to work, and I needed a way to get there. Being. For that first week or 2, I was being a victim. I grieved the cat, the car I had recently bought in cash and was very proud of, my house, and the whole lifestyle I had just rebuilt after the divorce, another loss that I had recently overcome. All my beautiful, most favorite things were in that house, and I lost them all. I was also grieving over the plan to have one of my children move back in with me while she went to college. She'd already been having second thoughts, but she didn't want to tell me and risk hurting my feelings. When I ended up in the tiny house in the hills, we both realized it wasn't going to happen. It felt like a really shitty place to end up. I wondered, how the hell did I get here in just a 5-day period? As I was going through my own rock bottom situations, I had to ask, who do I need to be? I had to own my little strength as well as my many weaknesses. I had to be vulnerable enough to admit those weaknesses in order to use my strengths to help me through. I had to own my truth, own myself, and trust that I was going to do the steps to get out of this rock bottom. I also had to take care of myself. I had a good reason to have a pity party, but I had even better reasons to get out of that funk and start asking, what can I do?
Is not one size fits all, just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation.
To grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com.